Thank you so much for the film and for being with us today. Just want to start at the basic beginning, which is, well, it's clear from the passion why you wanted to make the film, but if you could just talk a little bit about the origin of the movie and why you wanted to make it now and what the original idea was.
Well, back to the beginning, the original idea was to answer a question. What would happen if there was an ICBM aimed at the continental United States? What would happen in the halls of power and government and military institutions? And I was talking about this with a colleague of mine, and he said, you should speak to this gentleman who is a former journalist and now a screenwriter who is basically a subject matter expert, and that's Noah Oppenheim. So we got on the phone, and it just started like unraveling from there. It was an incredible conversation, that first one. You could just see the film, at least in my opinion, and the sort of time frame and the urgency of it, and then of course the fact that humanity, it's only all of humanity that's at stake. We felt, I guess we just felt compelled to do this as quickly as we possibly could. He wrote the script, which was meticulously crafted, and then with these amazing people here, we were able to bring it to life, and so that's kind of where it began.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about developing this script. You're a subject expert, but I'm wondering what kind of extra research you felt like you might need to do to develop the story fully and how you went about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I have an expertise, it's in how to ask questions of people who know a lot more than I do. If you're a screenwriter, getting a phone call that Kathryn Bigelow wants to talk to is about the best phone call you can get. So as soon as we got excited about this idea, as Kathryn mentioned, I had another life as a journalist and was fortunate to know a lot of the folks who worked inside these rooms. And what makes one of the many things that make a Kathryn Bigelow film so extraordinary is her ability to take people behind closed doors and render these environments and these dynamics with such authenticity and realism. So from the very beginning, the commitment was, we're going to find out exactly how an event like this would unfold, who would talk to who, what language would they use, what are the real processes and procedures. So just started calling folks who had worked at the Pentagon, the White House, the CIA, and from there the story took shape by listening to them, the people who had sort of lived these things.
I guess I want to rewind a tiny bit to the first conversations, because I'm wondering how early you knew that this was going to be such a multi-character depiction of what was going on, rather than, say, following one key character through the process.
I think initially in our first conversation was, all right, how do you invite the audience into 18 minutes of shared terror, which is what I believe this would be, and really have it be a kind of close, granular examination of that time frame and see how short that time frame is. And then we decided to look at it from different perspectives. The man on the ground who discovers or identifies the ICBM first, and then the people that take that information and move up the ladder to finally the gentleman at the top of the food chain here, which would be the president, who has to make the decision. And that was something that Noah just explicitly was able to calibrate kind of perfectly, I thought.
I mean, one of the things that the film does so well is take all these characters who have a relatively short screen time and remind us that they're human and that they're us. And I'm wondering if those are elements you added to the screenplay out of your imagination, or if that was part of the research of talking to the people who might actually be in this situation.
Sure. Well, it's when I got the first job I ever had that carried any responsibility in the news business, somebody said to me, "I've got bad news. There are no grown-ups on another floor that know what to do." So, and I think that's true of every institution, including our government. So, it was important to both of us to craft the script in such a way that it created room for those human moments. And then it really is, the extraordinary performances of folks like Jared and Tracy and Rebecca and Jason and Gabe and all of them who found every day on set ways to bring that humanity to the forefront.
Well, that's great, because the next question is for the cast members. Given how dedicated the film is to being realistic, I'm wondering what tools you used beyond the words on the page to build your characters in terms of their military expertise or any other aspect.
Well, for me, I wanted to know what a normal day would be like, because that was their expectation when they went in before it gets hijacked. And, the hijack part takes care of itself. So I read Mark Esper's book, his autobiography, just to try and get an idea of what the responsibilities are, what the sort of decisions that he'd be expected to make normally during the course of the day before all this happens. And then I guess in a sort of a way that, because of what's happened to Reed, he's kind of the weak link in the chain, in that chain of command, because of the stress that's put on him and by the bereavement over his wife, and then the realization that his daughter's in the firing line. That there is a moment in the story where the president asks him for advice, and he's now completely taken his eye off the ball, and he's now focused elsewhere. When he could have given decent advice to him, but he just basically says, just follow the procedures. But it's for a very human reason why he fails. Yeah.
But that underscores the risk of human fallibility. In this situation that we take for granted, we think we're safe, we're fine. There's a whole lot of people highly trained who can handle this. And yes, there are, but then there are elements that are unpredictable.
I didn't do any research, but before we get to that, I have to apologize for our wave from the balcony. I want you to understand something. So last night we did a wave from the balcony, and Kathryn was there. And we were all happy to do it because we were able to stand behind Kathryn and support Kathryn. Well, Kathryn wasn't here, and they said, well, you still have to go out on the balcony. We said, well, why are we going out on the balcony? Kathryn's not here. We were all very uncomfortable with that. It's a little like if you were at the Vatican and all the bishops walked out and the Pope wasn't there. It's like, well, what's the fucking point? Why did we all gather here if it's just going to be the bishops? So sorry about the balcony. I didn't really do any research. I didn't do any research because it was all on the page. It's a very well-written script. All the dramaturgy is on the page. Everything I needed to know about the guy was on the page. It was all in the lines. And, the gig for us was just finding the human being, those moments. I mean, Jared gets a whole scene with his daughter. I didn't get a scene with a daughter. So I had to make up some bullshit about Lindor, right? And you saw how that worked out for the Mets, didn't you? Next year.
I understand that there were advisors on the set during production. Were they there for the actors or for technical?
Everybody.
Everything.
Everybody.
Yeah.
They were extraordinary. And people that had worked in missile defense, had worked at Stratcom. And just, the details of you put that card into that holder on the desk before you do that. I mean, it's just the meticulous nature of their advice was extraordinary. And they were always on set for all of us.
They're in the movie. They're in uniform in Stratcom, and they were my research. I was able to turn to them at any given moment of the movie and say, is this right? Is this what I would be doing? Would I be saying this? what am I trying to accomplish here? What's the objective? They were my guardrails from the beginning to the end. I was their avatar in a sense.
We had a very early screening to a group of 3-star generals that these guys all knew, and I was quite nervous of that. Because of the presence of who they are, but with how true Kathryn is to the material, they had they could have had the biggest impact of change if they smelt bullshit, of which they did not.
I know, we were so lucky.
Kirk, so to you, I mean, there are so many facets to this film. There's the structure, then there's the fact that people are interacting with each other but not in the same space. Wondering if you can just talk about how you worked with that material to create the rhythms of the film.
I loved doing it, loved it. Kathryn was close by as a big sort of safety net underneath me, and with great enthusiasm the whole time. And that really counts for a lot. There was an excitement as we were making it, and I had the privilege of doing it in story order. And that sort of removed a lot of the confusion. When you're in it, when you're really focused in it, it's sort of, you can follow your nose and there's a simplicity to it, and you step back and watch it, it's like, holy shit. Because it moves really rapidly. There was some things that I was quite strict about, as long as it didn't hurt with performance, of if you're changing locations in a conversation with people. If Tracy's on this side facing that way and we bounce to a new place, I want to be on that side facing this way, and 3 cameras and everything's I could pretty much always get away with it. So I had things like that I think help the audience take in rapid information, because there's a clean storytelling sort of rule to it, even though it's a moving camera and it feels like it's found and honest. Then as you're moving through the film, you're accumulating more data that was just heard the first time, and then more things are picking up, so it gets more and more complex with what it's repeating. But we sort of cut the film somewhat 2 times. The first was just performance-based, gut-based, heart-based, to sort of illuminate the handiwork that all the great stuff that you just had to use. That the actors did, and then I went through a second time doing all the diligence of, this was the part that was said in Act 3, and it took 10 seconds between this part. We want to make sure that that's exactly what that was. And then that was a real piece by piece, with sort of saying, does making this accurate help the film, or did we hurt it? And if it hurt it in that part, then you could go back and check to see if you could flex this button. It was confusing.
But the precision that he cut it with is just, every time I would look at it, it was just astonishing. That precision was, the groundwork for that was in the script, but then when you're looking at, it's exact from one chapter to another. And anyway, it's extraordinary.
For the composer and sound team, again, one of the things that really strikes me about the film is that it's a thriller, but it keeps bringing in the human connection. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how the music and the sound design work with those 2 elements and this incredible structure.
Well, first of all, sometimes it sounds like me and Paul, we are sitting in a room and discussing heavily how the sounds are. Is that your frequency that you are using, and I'm using this frequency? But that is not happening. The only thing what we do is we exchange our status of where we are permanently. So, we update each other. That's mainly what it is. And then we talk about maybe areas where we feel like this could be more a sound design scene, or this could be more music. But you know what, when I saw the movie the first time, and I had the feeling the work was so well done, and it was so precise, and so well filmed. The acting was fantastic. It's for a musician, if you don't have someone on a horse riding over a wide prairie, something like that, you feel a little bit limited in the first place, because you look at people sitting in a room with screens, and that is then the thriller. and you have to find in a way tonalities in between where you can actually, where you not destroy the documentary elements of it, and also the acting, where you just find moods that you can maybe push a little bit, or you can pre-shadow things. And in a way, I started in the first scene. I rolled out the palette of right from the beginning. You hear the palette of what's the film about, and then you see all the elements that are in there. And so that was the main challenge. And obviously, we had in our conversation. That was great that we could exchange our thoughts on the scenes.
So usually usually in a big action movie, there's choices to see on the screen that you really tie all my work into. In a movie like this, it had a completely different demands, because the villain is, at the end of the day, we know something coming in. There's that blip on the screen somewhere, but we needed to build the tension in the scene and keep them visceral and feel that scary tension all the time. Also finding then moments where we can tone all this down to emphasize just the emotional part of the movie. And I did do my research.
I'm glad somebody did.
But we're lucky. We had a 3-star general that we got a hold of, or he was available for at all times, really, because it's a world I don't live in. I've never been in these places, but it was very helpful to understand what is in there, because when you look at it, it is an empty room with, a lot of dialogue in, but we need a lot of other things in there. So it's great to be able to do the research, go and the real things. So everything you hear in the movie is really exist in these places, and we try to utilize them then for the arc of the story in the movie.
Well, I have a million more questions, and I would love to talk for the rest of the day, but unfortunately we're out of time. So I really want to thank you for devastating our week and for the film, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.